A new CBS News poll out this morning finds 53% of Americans disapprove of the Republican tax plan. A majority of Americans say the bill will benefit large corporations and wealthy Americans, but only 31% think it will help middle-class Americans, and less than a quarter believe it will help them and their families. Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont is the ranking member of the Senate Budget Committee, and he joins us from Washington. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
Before we get to the tax plan, I first want to ask you about your colleague, Senator Franken. I know you called for him to resign yesterday, but last month you said it was up to Minnesota. What made you change your mind?
Well, I think the additional evidence that came forward, but I think what we have got to recognize as a nation, that this is a problem not only impacting high-profile men. What I worry about right now, as we speak, is that in restaurants and in offices all over this country, where you have bosses who are not famous, there is harassment of women. Women are being intimidated, and we need a cultural revolution in this country. And to my mind, it has to do with a woman's right to control her own body, to get equal pay for equal work, to have access to reproductive rights. So we have a lot of work to do to protect women's equality in this country.
We certainly do, and Senator Franken says, listen, that last allegation was absolutely not true. He has admitted to some, but he said the last one was not true. But I've talked to both Democrats and Republicans who say this. Senator Franken may likely step down today. Senator Moore possibly may be joining the Senate, and he has been accused of far worse than what Senator Franken is accused of. What is your take on that? How do you square that?
Let me take it a little step further. We have a president of the United States who acknowledged on a tape, widely seen all over this country, that he assaulted women. So I would hope that maybe the president of the United States might pay attention to what's going on and also think about resigning. But if your point is that it's not just Al Franken, you're absolutely right. But I do want to talk about the absurd tax proposal that the Republicans passed on Friday night. And I think what your poll tells us is the American people got it right. And what the American people understand is that this legislation is a gift to the largest corporations in this country who are already doing phenomenally well, and to the wealthiest people. 62% of the benefits in the Republican Senate tax proposal goes to the top 1% and large corporations. And at the end of 10 years, we're going to have some 80 million Americans, middle-class Americans, paying more in taxes. So in the midst of massive income and wealth inequality, we give tax breaks to billionaires, raise taxes on the middle class.
But your point about it going to is because the corporate tax rate, because what the Republicans are proposing is that it would go from 35% to 20%. To be fair, President Obama also proposed a reduction in the corporate tax rate, but to about 28%. Are you saying that those businesses won't reinvest that money in American businesses and American workers?
Yes, of course that's what I'm saying. And I think that's what they are saying. If anybody thinks that this is going to result in higher wages and more jobs in America, I don't believe that that's the case. This is trickle-down economic theory. It is a theory that did not work under Reagan, did not work under George W. Bush, certainly did not work in Kansas. But here's the other point. This legislation drove up the deficit by $1.4 trillion. And now what Paul Ryan and other Republican leaders are saying, oh my goodness, the deficit has gone up. We have to deal with that crisis. And you know how they're going to do it? Read the front page of the New York Times the other day. They are going to now come back and cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and education. So what this whole thing is about, tax breaks for billionaires and cuts to programs for the most vulnerable people in this country. And let me also add, some people may remember that during the campaign, candidate Donald Trump, he said, I'm not going to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Remember those statements? Said it over and over again. Well, I challenge President Trump today to tell the Republican leadership that he will veto any legislation that comes forward that contradicts the promises that he made to the American people in terms of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Senator, another issue at hand is keeping the government open and keeping it funded. It looks like there will be a stopgap plan in place for the next 2 weeks, but Congress is nowhere near a permanent deal. You have said that you will not vote for a spending bill without a permanent fix for dreamers. The president said that if there is a government shutdown, it's going to be the Democrats' fault. Are you willing to take that responsibility?
No, it's certainly not going to be the Democrats' fault. Let us all remember, last I heard, Republicans control the U.S. Senate. Republicans control the U.S. House. And right now, what is going on is Republicans want huge increases for military spending, but they don't want to provide another nickel to make sure that we can lower student loans in this country, that we could deal with the crisis of pensions in this country. Right now, 10,000 people died last year because they couldn't get their claims processed by the Social Security Administration, where funds have gone down. We have enormous issues that we have got to deal with, and instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, maybe it's time the Republican Party started looking at the needs of the working class and middle class of this country.
But in 2013, in the shutdown then, you said it is wrong for right-wing Republicans to ignore the results of the last election and hold the American people hostage by threatening to shut down the government because they can't get their way. What makes this different? Some people may say that sounds hypocritical.
Why are you assuming that we are shutting down the government? We want to keep. Who wants to shut down the government? I don't want to shut down the government. I don't know if anybody wants to shut down the government.
Well, Mitch McConnell said that this isn't a pressing issue. You still have 3 months until the DREAM Act comes up.
Mitch McConnell said that. Oh, I forgot. Last I heard, Mitch McConnell was the leader of the Republican Party who just passed tax breaks passed tax breaks for billionaires and tried to throw 32 million Americans off of the health insurance they have. There will be negotiations, and I hope very much these negotiations will resolve. But we cannot, in the midst of giving tax breaks to people who don't need it, in the midst of trying to throw millions of people off their health insurance, forget about the needs of the working class of this country and the middle class, which is shrinking. You know what politics is about? It's not just doing what your wealthy campaign contributors want you to do. It's paying attention to ordinary people.
All right, Senator Sanders, we're going to have to leave it there. We thank you very much for joining us. Should be a very interesting day on Capitol Hill today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.